You know that feeling when someone walks into your life with a clipboard and the godlike confidence of someone who's been elected by 3 people at a neighborhood barbecue? That was Marcy. Marcy with the perma-scowl, the visor tan, and an HOA badge like she was deputized by the Department of Homeland Annoyance. But let me back up. My name's Alex, I'm 32, and I live in a cabin. Not a glamping, Instagram aesthetic, sipping espresso in Birchwood Corner cabin, an actual, wood-burning stove, old fishing nets on the porch. Grandfather built it with bare hands cabin. My grandfather bought the land back in the 60s when you could trade a few $100 and a handshake for a piece of paradise. Over the years, the area around the lake got popular. A development cropped up across the water, complete with identical beige houses and an HOA that thought their jurisdiction extended as far as their Wi-Fi signal. Spoiler, it didn't. I lived on the west side of the lake. No HOA, no neighbors within screaming distance, and, more importantly, no desire to be part of Marcy's suburban Hunger Games. That all changed on a Wednesday. It was one of those days where the clouds looked like they were being held hostage, gray, moody, dramatic. I was out on the dock untangling fishing line when I heard tires on gravel. That alone was enough to raise a brow. Nobody comes down my road unless they're lost or selling religion. Then I saw it. A beige Toyota Highlander, complete with a sticker that read, "I heart emoji rules." Out stepped Marcy, clipboard in hand. Sunglasses so reflective I could see my confusion in them. And a walk that said, "I've written a complaint to a manager," while still in the drive-thru. She walked right up to the dock, clicked her pen dramatically, and said, "Hello, I'm Marcy, HOA president of Clearwater Bluffs. We need to talk about your non-compliance." I just stared at her. "You're standing on private property." She smiled, that kind of customer service smile that lets you know a complaint is already being typed in her brain. "Actually, we've recently voted to expand the jurisdiction of Clearwater Bluffs to include all adjacent lakeside properties." I blinked. "You voted to annex land you don't own?" "Yes," she replied, like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. "And according to our new regulations, this cabin is in violation of several ordinances. The woodpile is unsightly. Your roof is not an approved shingle tone. And," she squinted at my dock, "there are no permits for that structure." It took me a second. I honestly thought she was joking. "You voted to take over property, and then decided it was ugly. Got it." She narrowed her eyes. "Sarcasm won't help your case." "No, but trespassing might help yours, in court." She paused, a flicker of something that might have been concern breaking through her Botox. But just as quickly, it vanished. "You'll be receiving official notices in the mail," she said, spinning on her orthopedic heel and marching back to her HOA mobile. I watched her leave, half expecting a film crew to jump out and yell, "You've been HOA'd." But nope, just me, the lake, and a fresh new headache. The next week, the letters started. Notice of non-compliance. Request for immediate landscaping. Final warning, decorative nets are not permitted. It would have been funny if they hadn't been hand-delivered. By Marcy, who, apparently, considered my front steps her new morning cardio. And the cherry on top? A formal letter informing me I had 30 days to vacate the non-compliant premises or face legal consequences under Clearwater Bluffs HOA guidelines. It was absurd. It was insulting. It was war. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have a plan. Oh, I had a plan. But because I needed them to think I was just some reclusive cabin dweller with no Wi-Fi and a raccoon roommate. Meanwhile, I started digging. Turns out Clearwater Bluffs HOA was operating under some wildly creative interpretations of the law. Their jurisdiction expansion wasn't just illegitimate. It was basically them printing a monopoly board and claiming boardwalk. But it got better. See that lake? The pretty one with the ducks and the fishing and the occasional paddleboarder who thinks they're Jesus? Yeah, I own it. All of it. Including the narrow strip of land, about 200 feet, that connects the only road in and out of Clearwater Bluffs to their community parking lot, which meant their community lake access. That dock with the laminated rules and residents-only sign sits on my property. But I didn't just want to win. I wanted Marcy to understand, deep in her HOA-loving soul, that she messed with the wrong cabin. So I waited. Let the letters pile up. Let them schedule their compliance hearing, which I was cordially invited to attend via Zoom link and passive-aggressive email. And the day before that meeting, I had a couple of bright yellow metal signs installed. Private property. Trespassers will be prosecuted. Access to lake closed until further notice. Oh, and the road. Blocked. Chain and lock. Permit from the county filed that morning. Marcy didn't know it yet, but she was about to experience the HOA equivalent of being grounded by a parent who just found your secret Instagram. The Zoom Compliance Review and Eviction Preparation Committee meeting, yes, that was the actual title, was scheduled for 6 p.m. sharp. I logged in at 5:59 because I'm punctual like that. Not out of respect for them, obviously. Just wanted to see how much they'd squirm. The screen loaded up to a Brady Bunch grid of HOA board members, each with that smug suburban look of someone who thinks gated community means moral superiority. There was Todd, who looked like he'd ironed his eyebrows. Sharon, who nodded like a bobblehead every time someone mentioned property values. And of course, Marcy, dead center, in a pastel blouse that screamed, "I only relax during Pilates." She cleared her throat, did that over-the-glasses stare, and said, "Mr. Alex, we've convened this special session due to your persistent and intentional disregard for community guidelines. At this time, we'll be reviewing your non-compliance record and proposing removal procedures." Wow, I said, you practiced that? Sounds very Supreme Court, but if it met in a Panera Bread. Marcy didn't flinch. "This is serious, Mr. Alex." "Oh, I know. The fate of my cabin rests in the hands of a committee that recently voted on whether beige or tan was a more lake-friendly siding color." Todd cut in, trying to sound important. "Let's proceed. The resident in question has failed to comply with directives concerning unapproved exterior modifications, unauthorized dock structures, and a woodpile in clear view of the lake path." I sipped coffee slowly, just to make sure they knew I wasn't worried. "You mean the dock that's been there since 1973? Or the woodpile I used to heat the place I own, on land that's not part of your development?" Sharon leaned forward. "Your refusal to attend the initial compliance seminar was also noted. You invited me to a mandatory seminar about approved mulch colors." I thought it was satire. Marcy's lips thinned into a line that could cut drywall. "We're issuing a formal notice of removal from Clearwater Bluffs jurisdiction. You'll be required to vacate your cabin within 15 days. I raised an eyebrow. "You can't evict me from something you don't own." Marcy's voice dropped an octave. She thought she had me. By failing to respond to repeated requests, and by ignoring HOA expansion notices, you've effectively forfeited your right to contest jurisdiction. I smiled. Cute. Very dictator meets day planner. But let me clarify something for this fine board. I pulled out a document, laminated, just for effect, and held it up to the camera. This is the original deed to my grandfather's property. It includes, among other things, the entirety of the west shoreline. But here's the kicker, this little line here says I own the lake. It's not a public body of water. It's private. And that adorable dock you put up last year, the one with the HOA logo, I flipped the page, is on my land, as is your access trail, and the parking lot. Silence. Literal silence. The kind where even the HVAC in the background shuts up out of respect. Marcy blinked. "You're mistaken," she said, but it came out weak, like her voice was trying to backpedal. "Nope," I said cheerfully. "I've already confirmed it with the county, and I filed for restricted access status, which means as of this morning, none of your residents are allowed to use the lake without my written permission. And I don't like writing." Todd actually muttered, "Wait, he owns the lake." Marcy tried to salvage the train wreck. "Even if that's true, the HOA has rights to enforce aesthetic guidelines." "Nope," I cut in, grinning. "You don't. Not on private land outside your subdivision. The jurisdiction expansion you sent me? Legally meaningless. It's like me declaring war on some country from my front porch." "But, I waved my hand. "There's more. That parking lot you all use, built partially over my parcel. I'm filing a cease and desist for trespassing. So unless you'd like to park in your own driveways and carry kayaks through 3 backyards, I suggest we reevaluate your approach. Sharon had stopped nodding. Todd looked like he was going to Google eminent domain just to see if it could save them. And Marcy? Marcy was doing that thing where her eye twitched, but she pretended it was just dust. I propose, I continued, that I keep living my peaceful, woodland hermit life, and in exchange, I don't charge you monthly access fees for your precious lake. You can't do that, Marcy hissed, finally losing her cool. Oh, I can. And I will. Unless, of course, you want to test it in court. But I've already spoken to my lawyer. He's very enthusiastic about the idea of subpoenaing your expansion vote emails. Another long silence. Then Todd coughed and said, perhaps we can revisit the situation. No need, I said. You'll get my formal offer tomorrow. It includes a very generous clause. Your residents can continue to use the lake for $1 a year. Marcy's eyes lit up with hope until I added, per resident. The meeting ended without a word. Just a series of blank stares and one very loud click as someone slammed their mouse in frustration. But we weren't done. Not even close. Because the moment the signs went up and the access road was locked, the residents turned on her. By Friday, the lake was as calm as ever, but the HOA Facebook group? Full-on civil war. I wasn't part of it, of course. I don't willingly walk into digital HOA spaces unless I'm bored or drinking. But I had a friend who screenshotted everything. The first post was from a guy named Barry, retired dentist, 2 golden retrievers, suspiciously tan year-round. Just try to take the kayak out. Who put a lock on the dock gate? Is this legal? Then came Linda, always signing off her posts with blessings. I moved here for lake access. I was told it was community-owned. What is going on? And finally, the bomb from someone named Julie who clearly had no chill left. So I just found out Marcy tried to annex someone's private property and got us all banned from the lake. My son's birthday party is tomorrow. If I have to explain to 12 6-year-olds why they can't go swimming, I'm suing. The sweet, sweet smell of neighborly revolt. See, HOA Karens like Marcy operate on one thing, illusion of control. The moment the illusion cracks, the rules, the fines, the made-up guidelines written in Comic Sans, the whole house of beige collapses. But I wasn't just enjoying the show. I was busy. That weekend, I put in work. I called the county again, made sure my property filings were airtight, marked the boundary lines with bright orange tape and official signage, laminated, of course, because I like flair. Put up a motion-activated sprinkler system near the trail that led from the subdivision to the lake. Not to be petty, but to be educational. Wet sneakers tend to make a point faster than legalese. And then came the most delicious part of all. I dropped flyers in every Clearwater mailbox. To the residents of Clearwater Bluffs. Due to recent unauthorized attempts by your HOA board to seize private land, all access to the lake, dock, and adjacent parking lot has been revoked. These properties are privately owned. However, I am offering a solution. A private lake access membership is now available for $1 per year per household. This membership includes dock privileges, fishing rights, and a 15% discount at the roadside bait shack I'm opening in June. HOA leaders will be required to sign a formal acknowledgement of their overreach before memberships are granted. Regards, Alex, the guy who actually owns the lake. I wasn't in it for the money. I was in it for the power shift. By Sunday, I had 42 emails. 39 were neighborly. 3 were outright groveling. And 1 from Marcy. Subject line, urgent, can we discuss lake access? I printed it out, stuck it on the fridge, and let it sit for a few days. You can't rush these things. Like fine wine or HOA meltdowns, better when they age. But the rest of the neighborhood? They weren't waiting around. At first, it started with quiet rebellion. A few lawn signs disappeared. HOA violation number 23. Someone started parking an RV on their own driveway, Marcy's ultimate nemesis. And then someone, I won't say who, but let's just say I might have offered them a beer the next day, painted over the HOA welcome sign with giant spray-painted letters. Free the lake. Meanwhile, the board tried to hold an emergency meeting, but half the members didn't show. Todd resigned. Sharon ghosted. The treasurer, who also ran the bake sale committee, made a dramatic post about the end of neighborhood unity. And Marcy? She went full dictator. Started handing out paper warnings by herself. Tried to ban inflatable flamingos. Threatened to fine someone for overly aggressive daffodils. It was like watching the fall of Rome, but with more citronella candles. Then one afternoon, I heard gravel crunching again. I looked up from my porch, and, surprise, there she was. Clipboard clutched like a life preserver. "Marcy," I said, "back to seize more sovereign land." She didn't smile. "We need to talk." "Sure," I said, kicking my boots off the porch railing. "Let me just get my deed and a folding chair." She took a deep breath. "I'd like to formally apologize. On behalf of the Clearwater Bluffs HOA board." I blinked. "You rehearsed that in the mirror?" Her lips tightened. "We overstepped. And we'd like to accept your offer. The $1 membership." I looked at her for a long beat, then stood up, walked over, and handed her a pen. "I'll need you to sign this first," I said, pulling out the acknowledgement of overreach and renunciation of jurisdiction form. "Legal, binding, and notarized. Thank you, Cousin Phil." She stared at it. "You're serious?" As a spreadsheet at a budget meeting. Marcy signed. With that single signature, her power over me, and over every duck paddleboard-loving neighbor, officially died. But the saga wasn't over yet. Because there was one last thing she didn't know. You'd think that after the lake drama, Marcy would have taken up a hobby. Gardening, maybe. Birdwatching. Something wholesome and harmless that didn't involve passive-aggressive enforcement of invented regulations. But no. See, for people like Marcy, admitting defeat is like drinking vinegar. Even after she signed the acknowledgement, I knew that clipboard of hers was still whispering sweet delusions of control into her ear at night. And I was right. 2 weeks after our little porch-side peace treaty, she tried to have the county review the legitimacy of the dock permit. Which was adorable, really. Except that I'd had the original permit laminated, framed, and mounted in my living room, right next to my world's okayest fisherman mug. She also sent an anonymous letter to the Department of Environmental Protection, suggesting I was polluting the lake with chemicals of unknown origin. "You mean the fish food?" "Yeah, real biohazard stuff, Marcy." But the final straw? The final, glorious straw that broke the HOA camel's overregulated back? She tried to organize a community vote to buy the lake. My lake. She called it Reclaiming the Commons. She printed brochures. She hosted a lakeside barbecue on my dock, which earned her a trespassing warning. She even had the audacity to create a GoFundMe titled, "Let's Take Back Our Water." It raised $73.12, and half of that was from someone who thought it was about cleaning up pollution. So I did what any reasonable landowner with a taste for petty justice and a laminator would do. I opened a lakeside bait shack. Not just any shack. This was a masterclass in strategic design. It looked humble, tin roof, driftwood signs, a painted fish named Larry over the entrance. But the beauty was in the details. I put up a sign. Lake access through store only. Open daily 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And beneath it, in fine print, membership required. No HOA enforcement allowed beyond this point. Inside, I stocked it with soda, ice cream, bait, tackle, overpriced sunglasses, and one very dusty legal textbook labeled Property Law for Stubborn People. I even had t-shirts printed that read, "I got evicted by an HOA that didn't own me." People loved it. The neighborhood kids came by for popsicles. Retired dads hung out talking about lures they never actually used. Even Linda, blessings, brought me banana bread and a handwritten thank you note for putting Marcy in her place. But here's where things got interesting. Remember that parking lot? The only one Clearwater Bluffs had that wasn't attached to individual homes. Yup, still mine. And it turns out, I was under no obligation to keep it public. So one morning, I put up a gate. A literal, bright red, keycard-operated gate. And in front of it, a sign. Parking for lake members only. Violators will be towed and mocked. Cue the HOA meltdown part 2. Marcy marched up the trail like she was leading a protest. Clipboard in one hand. A small crowd of very confused residents in tow. She looked around the bait shack, the new signs, the gate. Her face twisted into that beautiful expression you only see when a control freak realizes they have none left. "This is retaliation," she barked. "Nope," I smiled, sipping lemonade. "This is called land use. Look it up. You can't gate off the parking lot. The HOA paid for that gravel, and I own the land under it. You want the gravel? Bring a shovel." She turned to the group behind her like she was expecting applause. Instead, someone muttered, "Honestly, I kinda like the t-shirts." Marcy, in her infinite wisdom, tried one last trick. She filed a complaint with the county zoning board claiming my bait shack violated commercial zoning codes. But my grandfather had filed a special exception permit back in 1987 when he sold hand-carved duck decoys from the exact same spot. One laminated permit later, and that complaint got laughed out of the office. At this point, even Marcy's inner circle was done. Todd, now a regular at the shack. He brings donuts. Sharon, moved out. Julie, runs a kayak rental business, with my blessing and a 10% cut. Marcy was alone. No allies. No authority. No clipboard magic. But I wasn't finished. Not yet. Because one final twist was still in the works. Something that would tie the bow on this whole HOA takedown. A little thing called eminent domain reversal. I always knew the end had to be spectacular. Not just a quiet, awkward HOA retreat. No, Marcy needed a legacy moment. A signature collapse. Something worthy of the chaos she created. And thanks to a little concept called eminent domain reversal, I had just the thing. Now, let's not pretend I'm some sort of zoning expert. But my cousin Phil, the guy with a law degree and a burning hatred for overreach? Yeah, he was more than happy to help. See, decades ago, Clearwater Bluffs had applied for a minor public use easement on the east side of the lake to build that parking lot and path. Trouble is, they never properly closed it. It was technically provisional, and when the lake changed ownership to yours truly, it invalidated the easement. Legally, that strip of land was no longer public. It had reverted to the current landowner. In other words, me again still forever. So with Phil's help, I filed the reversal paperwork. And then I got dramatic. I sent formal letters to the HOA board, county officials, and, for extra flavor, the local news. Headline the next week. Man reclaims lake from HOA. Says, take a hike. Literally. Marcy's face was in the corner of the article. Blurry, mid-frown. Probably unaware she'd be immortalized as the woman who tried to annex a private cabin and lost the only parking space her entire community relied on. But my cherry on the top? The Lakeside Festival. I announced it 3 weeks in advance. Giant flyers. A website. Invites to every local family within a 5-mile radius, except for the HOA board. I even invited a bluegrass band. People brought kayaks, coolers, camping chairs. Someone roasted a whole pig. We had kids fishing off the dock, retirees dancing barefoot, and 2 different barbecue contests going on simultaneously. And right in front of everyone, on stage, microphone in hand, I told the story. The full story. How Marcy tried to take my land. How she forged votes to expand the HOA. How she misled residents, threatened me, trespassed, filed bogus complaints. All of it. People booed. Someone yelled, "Down with the HOA," like we were reenacting the Boston Tea Party. It was beautiful. Then came the final twist. I donated half the lake access memberships, permanently, to families outside the Clearwater Bluffs subdivision. Just normal folks who wanted to enjoy the lake without being harassed over what kind of cooler they used. The HOA, they could still buy in. But now it cost $100 per year per household. All proceeds going to trail maintenance and public access education. Why the change? Because Marcy had gone behind everyone's back and spent nearly $2,000 of HOA funds trying to sue me again. The board finally ousted her after the community caught wind. And on her final day as HOA president, I personally delivered a care package to her door. Inside, a lake membership rejection letter. One of my t-shirts, I got evicted by an HOA that didn't own me. A framed photo of my dock with the words, private property, EST 1963, burned into the wood. And a note. Dear Marcy, you're free to apply again next year. Maybe try a little less clipboard and a little more humility. With warmest regards. Alex, lake owner, festival founder, woodpile offender. She didn't respond. But a week later, a real estate sign went up in her yard. She moved. Word is, she's now living in a condo downtown. No HOA. No lake view. Just a very aggressive neighborhood pigeon. As for me, I sit on the porch of my grandfather's cabin most evenings, fishing rod in one hand, lemonade in the other. The bait shack's doing just fine. The lake's peaceful. The locals love me. And not a single HOA letter has graced my mailbox since. Because sometimes, when someone tries to bulldoze your life, the best revenge is to pave a road right through their delusions and then charge them for parking. Thank you for being with us. Please share in the comments where you are watching from and whether you liked everything, and see you next time.